You're listening to a podcast from the BBC World Service. This is Hardtalk with me, Stephen Sacker. Thanks for downloading this edition of the programme. I do hope you enjoy it. My guest today is a familiar figure in Brussels, a former EU commissioner who is now a senior minister in her home country. That country is Bulgaria, the poorest of all the European member states. And Meglena Kuneva, though herself an ardent European, now represents a government that has an uneasy relationship with Brussels. Right now, the biggest challenge facing Bulgaria and the EU is the migration crisis. Bulgaria is on the front line. It shares a border with Turkey, which hosts 2.5 million Syrian refugees, many of them eager to get into the European Union. Bulgaria's iron fist response to migrants and refugees on its soil has prompted condemnation from human rights groups across Europe. It's one symptom of discord and disunity in the EU response to the crisis. There are other strains in the Brussels-Sofia relationship too, concerning the failure to root out corruption and establish a truly independent judiciary. After almost a decade inside the European club, why does Bulgaria still seem semi-detached? Well, Deputy Prime Minister Meglena Kuneva joins me now. Welcome to Hardtalk.
Thank you.
I think we have to start with the deal, the outline deal, which has been drawn up between the EU member states and Turkey. It's somewhat complicated, but it seems Turkey will take back all those irregular migrants who reach Greece, including Syrians, but only on the understanding that the EU will agree to take one-for-one Syrians from the refugee camps inside Turkey. Does Bulgaria support the deal?
Yes, actually this is one-for-one deal as we call it, and I think it's fair. And it's burden sharing. We show solidarity, which is a must in this difficult time.
So, to be clear about it, if there will be, and it seems there will be, quotas decided by the European Commission as to how many Syrian refugees each EU member state will take, Bulgaria will be quite happy to accept its quota.
Well, nobody is happy under these circumstances with quite disturbing sources of
well, forget the word happy.
Okay,
you don't have to be happy, but will Bulgaria commit right now to take whatever quota it is given?
Yes, if it is about burden sharing and solidarity, we fully understand our responsibility, and yes, we already promised once when the quota system started to be discussed that we will take our share.
Well, that's very interesting you say that, because last September, yes, you're right, the European Union began this idea of collective burden sharing. The idea was 160,000 refugees would be spread around the member states. Bulgaria only agreed to, you said you'd take, what, 1,600?
Yeah, this is the share of Bulgaria.
Yeah, and you know, how many have you actually taken?
Well, unfortunately, this quota system doesn't work quite well.
No, you've taken two. Two.
Indeed, but this is a matter of willingness of the refugees. So,
it just makes me wonder whether frankly, this deal in outline is worth the paper it's written on. A country like yours says, yes, we'll accept our quota, but history of the last six months would suggest you've no real intention of implementing it.
It's not about our intention, I dare to say. Bulgaria, of course, is very much, we stick very much to what we have promised. But how to make people who are very much willing to go to Sweden or to Germany, how to make them and to press them and to force them to come to Bulgaria, which of course is a country with, a language which is not so spread like German or English. So this is the first difficulties which the refugees will face. And also economically, of course, the countries like Germany and Sweden are, better off. And refugees, they hope that they will have better life there.
Maybe there's another reason that refugees look at Bulgaria and think, I don't want to go there. They see in your government and your policy a completely, frankly, uncompassionate attitude to them. They see violence. They see that one refugee was actually shot dead by your security forces, and they think, I would never want to go to that country.
The refugee haven't been shot, as you said, but there was a a gang, and it was a ricochet of the bullet. So it's...
well, you can dress it up how you like, but the fact is your security forces killed a migrant.
I'm quite careful and aware what does it mean killed and what does it mean something bad what happened by the accident. So I wouldn't accept such kind of word that the refugee was killed.
Well, there were also other incidents, including one incident where some Yazidi migrants were forcibly returned to Turkish territory from your territory, and 2 of them died of hypothermia. There is, underpinning your government strategy, many would say, including human rights groups, a callousness which is remarkable even in Eastern Europe today.
Well, we have some troubles to make people to be registered, and this is also part of our obligation, because we can very nicely discuss our human obligations, and I fully subscribe after it. But also we talk about security. As you introduced our talk, you said we have a border with Turkey, and there are no other European country with a border with Turkey. Imagine if we just opened the doors and all the refugees, without being identified, to come through the territory of Bulgaria and then go to wherever they want. So we need really to strike it right.
It seems there's a real contradiction here. You're telling me you support the deal that has just been struck with Turkey, which includes the notion that there will be visa-free travel for Turkey, a warm embrace of Turkey, a speeding up of the accession process with Turkey. And here you are saying, oh my God, we've got a Turkish border. We're very worried about it. I know you're deploying your army there. You're building a new barbed wire fence. These two different things don't seem to match.
No, we are talking about legal and illegal migration. So, being with all these terrorist threats, and don't take me wrong, I'm not saying that the migrants are terrorists or whatever close to this term, but we need to be vigilant, because together with people seeking rightly for a safe haven, might come those who would like also to do something bad on the European soil.
Well, it sounds to me you look at Turkey with a sense of apprehension and fear.
No, I wouldn't say so. We are good neighbors. We support each other.
Is that why you're building a barbed wire fence?
Because we cannot afford, with the Bulgarian guard forces, to have one guard at every 50 or 100 meters. So that's why we decided to build this facility. This is not exactly a border, which will save human capacity. Otherwise, we cannot, from the purely budgetary and administrative capacity reasons, we cannot go like this further.
So in all honesty, Deputy Prime Minister, do you believe it is right for Europe to speed up the accession process with Turkey and, by the summer, talk about delivering visa-free travel for all Turks into the European Union?
Well, first of all, when we talk about speeding up negotiations, still to open and close a chapter means to fulfill all the obligations and also to abide to the political criteria. And second, visa liberalization, I think that this is a step in the right direction. This one will help tremendously the Turkish society, and also will make Europe more apprehensive and to understand better the needs of Turkey.
Yeah, let's then get back to this notion that the deal, it is hoped, will stop the migration flow from Turkey into European territory. I just wonder whether you are now prepared to say to me, and we've talked about the shooting incident, but there have been many other incidents too, and we can talk about some of them, including police brutality, beatings, forcible pushing of migrants back over the border. I wonder whether you would now acknowledge to me that it has been bad for Bulgaria's reputation. What has happened over the last 6-9 months?
Well, I think to single out Bulgaria having difficulties to prevent the rules over the border, it's not very fair. We have the same incidents, as you said, in Hungary, for example, or in Austria, or in Germany, or in former Republic of Yugoslavia, Macedonia.
Nothing like the pervasive systemic use of violence and abusive practice against the refugees. I mean, it's not me saying that. It's, for example, the Belgrade Center for Human Rights which, in conjunction with Oxfam, did a detailed study of people who had passed through Bulgaria and managed to make it into Serbia. Of all of the refugees they interviewed from Syria, Iraq, Afghanistan, all who had had contact with the Bulgarian police reported abuse, extortion, robbery, physical violence, threats of deportation and police dog attacks.
Well, I very much appreciate the work of human rights activists, and this is their right and obligations to raise the voice and to ring the bell. I could assure you that...
And isn't it your obligation to respond to it?
Absolutely.
Truthfully, and to find out what went wrong and to make sure it doesn't happen anymore.
Exactly. That's why we made a lot of internal investigations among the police officers, and we raise the public awareness what is right and what is wrong.
Well, Bulgarian state television broadcast from 2013 actually included interviews with members of the border police who said that their superiors had instructed them to, quote, beat refugees and, quote, send them back.
No, this is completely wrong. It can't be like this. If there is one single case, if people claim for it, I believe that not only the minister but also the professional governance of the ministry had taken note from this.
There's a phrase which has been used about not just Bulgaria, let's be fair, but about some other governments in Eastern Europe, and the phrase is a compassion deficit. Now, I wonder whether you would acknowledge that there is something about the attitude of East European peoples who feel themselves that they maybe, are suffering economically, that their lives are difficult, that the EU hasn't maybe delivered them all of the promises that they'd hoped it would deliver, that they don't really feel much compassion for these migrants coming in from outside. Is that true?
Well, you asked me a quite psychological question. I don't want, first of all, to have another one border between mental one between West and East in Europe.
Do you feel there is a bit of a division between?
Well, we are closer to the conflict. When the conflict is just one border from Turkey, and you are obviously responsible to guard the entrance into the European Union, you should perform. And actually what is a lack of EU policy is lack of enforcement, because we decided once that we need to have a control over the European borders, and we didn't manage. So instead of complaining that the big countries like Germany, like Spain, like Italy, they should do more, the Eastern European countries, they regained the control. Maybe not all the time quite properly. Actually, Bulgaria was not together with V4, with Visegrad 4, in respect of rejecting quota.
No, you've made it plain to me. You're not rejecting quotas.
We accepted quota, but we need to have equal treatment. And if it is stipulated that we need to regain control over the borders, it's it's really hard talk. But we need to do it.
Well, this is hard talk, and I'm going to ask you another hard question. I wonder whether there is an element of xenophobia, Islamophobia in your government's response to this migration challenge. I'm just looking at the words of your Prime Minister, Mr. Borisov. I'm scared, he said. The Bulgarian people are scared. If only because of where religion is concerned. After all, we are Christian and they are Muslim.
Well, the Prime Minister should talk with the Bulgarian people and be outspoken about their concerns. Maybe some parts of the society, they do have such kind of concerns, and better the Prime Minister to speak up instead of somebody else.
Well, but it's dangerous, isn't it, to legitimize? Isn't it dangerous to legitimize this sort of language? I mean, the Orthodox Church released a statement in Bulgaria saying that the immigrant wave, quote, looks like an invasion. I mean, you only had 30,000 refugees come in, and only, I think, a small proportion of them have actually been given right to stay. So this idea that it looks like an invasion is nonsense.
Well, we live in a mediated society. And the moment you switch on the TV and you start to watch that the refugees are coming, well, the Köln incident, for example, Cologne incident in Germany, or other parts in Austria, or in Macedonia, which is another border with us, people do feel that this is almost in their homes. And again, I very much insist on it. We have populist parties in Bulgaria, like everywhere in Europe. And I stay very much behind the Prime Minister, being outspoken, what people think and what people fears. It means that we need to face these fears and try to solve the problem.
Are you scared?
I think that it's quite scary that Europe...
You think it's scary that a very few thousand Muslim refugees have come into your country? You think that's scary?
I think that the fact that we are not able to regain control over our borders, over European borders, it might be scary.
Yeah, but I'm particularly looking now at this clash of cultures that your Prime Minister, your church appears to be encouraging as a perception inside your own country.
You need to take this conversation into the context that we do have Muslim minority in Bulgaria. We do have...
I believe up to between 10 and 13% of your own countrymen are Muslim.
So this is not about Muslim. This is about unmanageable flow of refugees, and that's what people do.
But the Prime Minister said, they are Muslim, we are Christian, which is an odd thing to say when up to 13% of your own people are actually Muslim.
Yeah, I think that the Prime Minister was
wrong.
Not talking about. No, he hasn't talking about. He hasn't talking about what this clash of different religions, but unknown coming from outside. We are quite happy to live with Muslims for centuries in Bulgaria.
Right. Just a final point on this. It just interests me that you have many posts as a Deputy Prime Minister, one of which is you're also Education Minister. Now, as I understand it, you got the job after the last minister essentially was fired because he was proposing to change textbooks to get rid of some of the more inflammatory language suggesting that the Turks had held Bulgaria in slavery for hundreds of years, that they had dominated and enslaved your people. He was fired for trying to change the textbooks.
No. It's about how to say mismanagement to explain to the public what's went wrong with the textbooks. And actually, according to our rules, this one should be discussed publicly and for a long time. And if this is not done, then of course somebody.
So just on the issue, you're now Education Minister. We've talked a lot about the EU's developing relationship with Turkey. Do you think it is right and proper that Bulgarians are taught that they were held in slavery for hundreds of years by the Ottoman Turks?
Well, I think that you are very well briefed, but you need to know also our literature, our history, and to know more about how many people just gave their lives for the freedom and to have our own state. So this one reflects in our literature, reflects in our history, and we need to be open and to say from what we went through.
Let's talk now about Bulgaria today. We reflected on the fact that maybe your attitudes to the migration problem are somewhat coloured by the fact that you are the poorest country in the European Union. I think one survey found that your people were the unhappiest in the European Union. Why is it, do you think, that Bulgaria's membership of the EU for the last 8 years or so hasn't delivered for the Bulgarian people?
Well, I think that to manage expectations is one of the most difficult tasks for a politician and for all of us. So if we expected the miracle to be overnight and Bulgaria quickly to be a better place to live and to work, it's not 100% fulfilled, but
is it also
we achieve a lot. And also the European Union went into crisis almost immediately Bulgaria entered into the Union. We have the energy crisis with Russia. We've been totally affected by this. Then financial crisis, which we felt, without being guilty to bear circumstances after this crisis. So this is not the happiest time for Europe.
But maybe it's also because Bulgarians hope that getting into the EU club would improve governance in Bulgaria, and it hasn't.
This one I fully recognize as our own responsibility.
Yeah, and it hasn't worked, has it? I mean, the latest Commission report on progress in Bulgaria under your cooperation verification mechanism. I mean, it's full of jargon, but basically the message is Bulgaria has to do a lot more, make much more progress against corruption, organized crime, that Bulgaria is failing.
Well, if you read thoroughly the report, there are areas where Bulgaria is improving the status quite substantially. But of course, we have still a lot to do. I think on anti-corruption pretty soon, the good news will come in Bulgaria, but it's a tough battle. It's a tough battle.
Your government tried to pass a law creating a new anti-corruption authority. It was rejected in the parliament.
Yes.
What does that tell us about the systemic...
Well, that the law was too good, too strong maybe. I think that there've been some fears in the parliament. Actually, I introduced the bill. So they've been kind of a reluctance to accept the law as I proposed and the Council of Ministers proposed, because the parliamentarians, they felt that it might be witch hunting, and this one will be used as a political tool, which never crossed my mind, of course. But now we have a second attempt, and I hope that this time the law will pass.
Your president made a speech earlier this year where he expressed some big ambitions. He said, you know, we have to aspire in Bulgaria to be inside the euro, to be a part of Schengen, to be absolutely, you know, front and center in the heart of Europe. But it seems to me that you're not on a track to achieve any of that.
No, I think just the opposite. We are on track to achieve all of that. I believe that Bulgaria is more than ready to join Schengen, and we are able to protect the European border, our border. We are quite ready with all the figures about our economy. We will be quite ready to join the euro, which is part of our treaty actually. And this one will bring stability. Actually, we have a currency board, and we implement the rules of euro, of discipline of the euro area.
Final point.
I think that it's quite manageable in the next.
So you want to fully integrate with the European Union. You're here in London when the British are, of course, preoccupied with a decision about whether to leave the European altogether. But even if they don't leave, David Cameron says, you know, he's negotiated a deal which leaves us very much out of some of those integration projects. Do you think it's important that Britain stays in?
Yes, I do.
Why?
Well, I appreciate what you have as experience, as diplomatic skills, and innovative way of doing single market. I very much like the idea of single market. It's a highly political idea, actually, not just trade among the countries. I think that you are one of the forces for good in the European Union, and I hope that British people will say yes when the moment to vote come.
All right. Well, Meglena, Kuneva, thank you so much for joining me on Hard Talk. Thank you very much indeed.
Thank you very much.
That was an edition of Hard Talk presented by me, Stephen Sacker. For details of our complete range of podcasts and our terms of use, go to bbcworldservice.com/podcasts.